Welcome to the Dream Life is Real Life podcast with your host, Hanna Hermanson, bringing you real-life stories of people who realized their dreams to educate and inspire you to create your legacy of abundance now.
We're back, and today we are hanging out with Tiffani Purdy. Tiffani is a life coach who helps people have a better relationship with themselves and each other. Specializing in emotional communication and family alchemy, Tiffani changes lives by fostering an atmosphere of self-awareness, self-acceptance, and radical self-love. She leads the #RelationshipOfOne movement, which is the philosophy that by developing a deep relationship with our highest self, we can become fearlessly loving in our relationships with any and everyone. She is the author of the Amazon bestseller about the psychology of identifying and breaking limiting beliefs. It's called The Ego Death Experience. And she is the host of the weekly podcast, Emotional Authority. She has previously been featured in Bustle, Elephant Journal, and TEDx. Tiffani lives in Tampa, Florida with her daughter, Mana, and today we get to learn from you. Thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So we were just chatting a little bit before, and I said, I don't really have anything scripted, but I will just read your bio. And she's like, you know what, actually read this one. And you made a comment that I was like, oh, wait, let's hold that. I want to record talking about the comment you made, which was your previous bio talked about some of the tools you use, like human design and astrology. And you said that there's recently been a shift in even just how you describe the work you do. So would you mind giving us some insight into that epiphany? Because I think that's a really powerful realization.
Thank you. Yeah, I would love to actually, because this very moment, as we live and breathe, I'm in the middle of a visual and story rebrand for my my website and just everything, how I explain myself. And I think that it is really important to distinguish yourself from your tools, because I do, nothing has really changed about the way that I work. I do still use astrology and human design as two of the main tools that I use with my clients. But what I really recognized, and especially coming into contact with more and more people in my field, there are so many of us. There are so many people out there teaching astrology and human design, which is fabulous. Oh my God, we need more and more and more. Please, we need the language to be common. But at the same time, right, there are so many people who do lots of things, right? There are so many yoga teachers. There are so many nail artists. There are so many people teaching money mindset, right? Mm-hmm. You get behind the people that you get behind because you love them and you love their brand and what they're about. And yes, they teach money mindset, and yes, they do nails, and yes, right? But what they do is more of an extension of who they are. And so I thought that it was very important for me to bring around why I use astrology and human design versus telling you about, hey, I use astrology and human design.
Yes. Oh, that's like just the real embodiment of a personal brand, right? I think so often we talk about like figure out your stories and like communicate your personality and have these sort of pillars of content, but when it really comes to the description of the work you do outside of buzzwords, I think that takes a lot of confidence to not be like, well, I have all these credentials, or I rely on someone else's formula, or it's been proven by someone else, but rather to just, well, these are the results I help people get.
Absolutely. And I think that that's really where I hope to see more and more people going. And it was something that I kind of recognized looking at not people necessarily who use the same tools that I do, but just generally like big figures, the Gabby Bernsteins, right? Yes, Gabby Bernstein uses Kundalini meditation. Mm-hmm. Yes, she uses spirituality. Yeah, and there are a lot of other things that I use in my practice. If people were just coming to me because of human design, and then I start talking about spiritual principles and universal laws, I may be throwing someone for a loop there. And so I want to make it very clear about the intention of why it is that I do it, what I do, especially in the spectrum of astrology and human design, right? I'm not really here to give you a reading, which is what someone might expect from someone who is sharing about astrology and human design.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So we took a deep dive there, and I think you can only understand these, like, feedback is what I'm guessing inspired this, shift in you, whether it was feedback in your own, like, God, I'm having these conversations, or I'm like realizing that Gabby Berenstein doesn't do it this way. So let's just take a few steps back. Where did your journey begin, even just beginning in the entrepreneurial and spiritual space?
Wow, that's a big question. So technically,
the elevator pitch version, maybe.
Yeah. So technically, I've been in business online for a little over 6 years. I started in what I knew, right? I started doing SEO blogging. I blogged for small businesses, and I ended up getting into this like green business niche, right? So I wrote for Cintas. I wrote for the floortapestore.com for 2 years. And, I made money, right? I was making money online. And then I realized that I could actually do something that I cared about, right? It was kind of like a very real world scenario where you're just like working a job, but it just happens to be online. And you're like, oh, I don't want to go to work. So I had already kind of bridged that gap between making the connection that, yes, I can make money online. Yes, I can make money anywhere, but I didn't really recognize that I could own it. And then I just started playing. It was very much reminiscent of being 12 years old, playing with like my Neopets shop and, just like designing things and making it pretty and having a Facebook group. And so I just started playing, and all of a sudden things just kind of, people started coming to me and asking me lots and lots of questions. Various questions. Some of it was about business. Tiffani, how did you build this website? How did you start a lifestyle blog? How did you do this? How do you get your Instagram filters like that? But some of them were very much more like the personal, existential, like, Tiffani, I know that you were suicidal in high school. Like, how did you do this? Like, Tiffani, I know that you just a couple of years ago were completely dirt broke homeless. Like, how are you doing this? Right. And so there were a lot of these like very, emotional and personal questions that I was getting from people. And I kind of had the epiphany moment one day that when I was there, right, that didn't feel like work, but I was helping people. And that's a job. And I didn't really take ownership of that until I had helped a few people. And so then the transition finally, when I committed and I stopped doing things that I didn't feel like I had to do anymore just to make money, and I could do what my soul wanted. That was in 2017. And then finally, astrology and human design and all of the tools that I use got folded into the mix right around the time that I hit my Saturn return. Because life was just happening. I was like, what is happening? And a friend of mine cued me into astrology, and that was it. And it just became a very intuitive language. I've never understood something so complex so easily. And again, because coaching was the very same way, it was just very fluid. It felt like I was just meant to do it. Astrology became part of me. And so, yeah, it's just been from then on, it's really just been playing and pivoting and steady growth and
playing and pivoting. Yes. And this is something I'm working on in my own life and business. And it's the power of action feedback. And I think, we started the conversation with that kind of realization in a really kind of specific piece of your business right now. But I think it's so important for listeners to hear that it's going to take action, putting yourself out there. I had a similar story of like, I just started a Facebook group because I was lonely, and then it became a thing in 2016. And so whether that's putting yourself out there with a workshop or, just getting that feedback, I think is so important to find the things that feel like flowy and aligned.
Absolutely. You can't know what they are until you start doing. That's exactly, I tell my clients all the time, it's not enough to just make a new choice on the set of, or in the level of belief. Then you have to actually do the thing, right? When you make a new choice, you have to act on it in order for you to expect a new result. It's not enough for us to just believe really hard and expect that our life is just going to become perfect around us.
Yes. Oh, so true. That the choice is a big big pivot
It's crucial step one, but you have to have some follow-up.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about the work you do with your clients. Are they still asking you about Instagram and SEO, or what are the types of coaching clients you're working with these days?
Yeah, that's so I definitely don't get quite so technical questions anymore, but that was several years ago now. So that's just been years of reaffirming that boundary, and gladly, pointing people to the tools and resources that I use, right? Like I'm one of those crazy solopreneurs that actually does manage everything. So I built my own website, right? Like I do my own like graphics, like everything. Like I manage my own podcast. So but most of it, a lot of the things that I use are templates or are, like creative market purchases.
Don't recreate the wheel, people. I love it.
Oh my God.
It's all done out there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. If you're in that in-between space where making a commitment to like a $4,000 fresh website from someone is maybe not, a comfortable place for you right now. My first investments were truthfully, my first larger investments were all in personal development and coaching and mindset, because I had a lot of the other skills, right? I grew up in the MySpace HTML generation. So Squarespace drag and drop ain't nothing to me, right? I already knew how to use Photoshop, right? Like I've known how to use all these tools. So I wasn't teaching myself to use them in order to create things that I am creating now, right? I'm using skills that I already have. Now, again, right, I'm not going to go become a graphic designer or a web designer or, right, like a branding specialist just because I know how to use these things. Again, use your skills, but they don't have to be what you are.
Well,
right?
And I think another thing people get tripped up on, because I hear so many similar starting points. They're like, okay, look, I had to do all these technical things. I know I could do that. And there's a more simple ROI. So when people are just starting out, it's like, okay, like if I can save you $2,000 on your website, you'll definitely pay me $2,000.
Totally.
And so when you talked about like going into blogging, okay, like people they know they're going to pay for that and they have this clear, tangible outcome, but then you get caught in these things that you don't really want to. It's like another boss, like you said, or then you're just like teaching people how to type their name on a computer when you know that there are these other things you need to be doing. So I'm super curious to hear, how you manage those sort of expectations and help communicate that personal development has massive ROI. And you step away from the other. Because it's easy to get caught up in those little tasky things that people are eager to delegate or pay you hourly for. So
absolutely. Well, and at the beginning of my business, I don't know, because for me, and again, this actually comes down to just my human design. There's no better way to express it. When we talk about human design, imagine that God has created a video game that we're all characters in. Right? So your character design is your human design. Okay. So without going any further into it, my character is designed to do a lot of work, to manage a lot of things. I have so much energy that it makes more sense for me to manage a lot of these things. Right. So I have a lot of entrepreneurial, clients who maybe are just the exact opposite of me, right? Where there are people who live and were born to exist mostly in flow state, right? If we have a spectrum of masculine and feminine, I'm probably leaning a little bit more toward the masculine, and I allow what exists in flow to be in flow, right? But I love managing my website. It's one of those things that it just feels like I'm playing. So it's one of those things where I get to, once every couple of months, just check out for a couple of days and like fuse into my computer. And it's very meditative, and it just reminds me of being a little kid again, a little bit. So there are definitely certain pieces of my business that I'm willing to give away. Like I went out for a photography session yesterday. Sure, I could have asked my boyfriend to take pictures of me, or I could have set up a tripod. I could have done a lot of things, but that's one thing that I'm definitely willing to outsource. One of the things I have a silly, or not a silly philosophy, but it's just a different one. I outsource a lot of life tasks. So I get my groceries delivered every week. I get a food box for like dinners, right? So it's already pre-planned, pre-packaged, pre-everything, meals. And all I have to do is just cook them and put it together. I pay for a service that has, I do bar at home every day.
Wow.
Right. And so, I have just a lot of conveniences in my life like that, because I don't want to have to do those things. I don't want to spend my time grocery shopping. I have a kid. She lives with me and works with me side by side every day. It takes a lot of time to put her in the car and take her to the grocery store and go around the grocery store and do all that stuff. And, for me, it makes so much more sense. I love all of the elements of my business that I do have my hands in right now. And as soon as I don't love something, that's when I know that it's time for me to outsource it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's really an important reminder for people listening that we talk about building a team or delegating, and it could be a housekeeper that's on your team that wins you back hours of your month every year.
55 hours is how many hours Instacart tells me. I've saved 55 hours grocery shopping this year. They don't factor in that I have a kid either. So let's call that more like 60 at least.
Absolutely. And what I think is so important that you're speaking to is that we can identify, and I do this with clients too, like let's write down all the places you're spending your time right now, and let's identify the things you can delegate. And sometimes it is household things. And the things we can't delegate, coming back to your point of what you're helping people with, we can't hire people to do our push-ups. We can't hire people to do our visualization or our meditation or our self-care. And so I think that brings me back to the importance of what you do and the personal development and the inner work so that everything else can happen. And your website will make sense and your family will be productive and happy and healthy. So
and I can't stress that enough. I definitely did spend a good amount of time pushing in my business. Where there was no flow and it was all masculine, right? And so it was very much, everything was about my business. I controlled every single piece of it. Like I have an accountant now, right? So that's one way that I outsource things. I think that I make a lot of choices about what I'm going to outsource based on, again, just like what I really just feel like, like when I go to do it, I'm like, right. And so that has definitely been huge for me. But it was when I allowed myself to release the things that make me go, that I had finally time, right? Everybody, I don't have time. That's where the time was. The time was hiding in all of the and that's where I get to go get a massage. That's where I get to go get my lashes done. That's where I get to go to Disney on Mondays with my daughter, right? Because I live in Tampa. It's 45 minutes away. So that's where I get to go do those things. And lo and behold, now I have plenty of time for my life and I have time for all of the things in my business that actually make me happy.
I love it. I love it. And here's another realization I had. I'm totally on the same page. Sometimes it's not the things that take a lot of time, right? Like 50, 60 hours is huge, but sometimes it's like that. Well, okay, I'll be totally honest. I had a client recently that it was like every time I saw an email, I was like, ugh. And it was an email, right? Like she wasn't taking up any more time than any of my other clients. She was paying me, like it was all good. But it was just this energetic space that I knew I was dreading, and I knew we weren't that good of a fit, and I knew it just was like on my mind all the time. And so, just having a frank conversation that I really think someone else would be a better fit for you. And even though it's just a couple hours a month that I gained back, that energy and all the, the low vibes that I was sitting in, and to release that is super powerful too. So
huge. I think that that's so good. And I feel like every coach at one point or another has that moment with a client that they've taken on. And I love that. I love that you had the courage and the honesty to say, hey, I don't think that we're a good fit, and to, maybe point them in a new direction, but to reclaim your own space, because of course, there is no lack. There is no, that client leaving isn't going to take anything away from you. And it's only going to open up space for that better fit to come along.
Exactly. This is so good. Okay. So tell us like a little bit more specifically, because I know you have like the relationship movement and the ego death experience. Like what are some of the scenarios of that, like clients are working on you with, or shifts that you're seeing in your work with them?
So essentially the core of my work is based around helping people to truly know themselves on a very energetic level. When we talk about empaths, for example, right? We're talking about an emotional empath. So in my work, I use a tool called Human Design, and it shows us all of the different ways that someone may be empathic, right? So there are 9 centers in Human Design. And so with that said, this helps me to show people where they may feel pressure that's not emotional, but maybe around finding direction, or needing to speak up, or getting lots of ideas when they're around certain people. And this helps them to stay in integrity with themselves on their own. And then also when they come into contact with people that they know personally, and then at that point to better understand themselves on a global community spectrum, right? So it starts with that relationship with yourself, relationship of one, and then understanding how that can expand into the one human family and that relationship that we're all in together.
Mm-hmm.
And so the ego death experience is really a book that helps people to understand, when we talk about limiting beliefs and identify and break your limiting beliefs, so many people really have a hard time finding the root of their limiting belief. And, we may get through lots and lots of surface beliefs, but there's a much easier and more efficient way of doing this. And it's by going and identifying, psychologically where our ego has created these rules. And so if we go back to the source, back to that first time that your ego created the rule, we can then wipe out all of the ripple beliefs that come out, as a result. And so that's really what the book came out of. And that's been, that actually, just poured out of me. I wrote it in a week. And it was just something that I wrote it the week of Thanksgiving, and I don't know, I felt like I just woke up and it was book. And it was one of those things that I couldn't work on anything else until it was done. It just poured out of me. And it was so good. It was amazing. And I still to this day, this was published last year. I don't actively promote it. It's just, it's a book. Go get it, but it's not like the crux of my business or anything. Right. And so it's wonderful though, when I still get messages from people who just randomly found it. And I got a message last week from someone, she said it was the best self-help book she had ever read. And
Wow.
that was crazy touching to me. So between that and then the Emotional Authority podcast, which is just kind of picking up now, getting to share with people, all in all, really, I guess what the theme of everything that I do is normalizing emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Helping people to recognize that emotions are okay, and more than that, that they're not real. And so they can't hurt you, and they can't hurt anybody else, right? And so helping people to normalize communication about emotion to me is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll never forget a time my therapist said, like, Hannah, no one is doing anything to you. Because nobody gets me. Everyone's holding me back. Everyone wants me to just be blah, blah, blah. And she's like, no. And she was so nonchalant about it. But to really understand that we have 100% control over our thoughts and that emotions are just perceived. Anyway, so I'm so with you. I'm excited to go pick up the book because I know there's such power in the work that you do. So we are getting to the pop quiz round of the show. So I just have 3 last quick questions for you.
Okay.
You ready?
I am, yeah.
Okay. So the first question is, what is an action listeners can take today that will help them get closer to their dream life?
Ooh, yes. Okay. So I was just quoted in an UpJourney article, and I think that what I said in there was actually perfect for this moment. And what I said was to ask yourself, or to switch from the I can't have this response to the how can I have this response. Yeah. And to take that shift of what is it that I really want to experience, and why do I believe I'm not allowed to have that?
Yeah.
And that's the fastest way to really pull yourself out of that victim stance and to get into action.
Ugh, I totally agree. Removing the word can't from my vocabulary totally shifted my life more.
Very much.
Because you have to start thinking about, innovation and what if I did? What if I was able?
But what if I did though? Yeah.
I love it. That's great. Question number 2 is, what is a tangible resource? You could do it. I don't know if it's your book maybe, or another podcast, or an experience you had that you would love to give listeners as a gift, because it will just radicalize their life.
Yeah. Well, you're definitely welcome to go find my podcast, Emotional Authority, but I do have a link for a little freebie ebook that I can give to you to pop in the show notes.
Okay.
The book that I wrote, so this isn't the Ego Death Experience. This is called, it's just a 30-page ebook, or it's a little over 30 pages. It's called A Guide to Family Alchemy. And so it really walks you through the 3 steps of the relationship of one kind of philosophy. I don't really talk so much about relationship of one in there, but you'll get to be walked through like the more human design, practical knowledge part of this. So it's knowing yourself, knowing what happens when you come into contact with another person, and then knowing what happens when you're in groups.
Awesome. So that leads me to question number 3, which is, where can people stay connected with you and get this ebook and learn more about what you're up to?
Yeah.
Where should we go? Find you.
Place right now. So definitely either Instagram or Facebook. And so it's just at Tiffani Purdy. It's Tiffany with an I at the end.
Tiffani. Awesome. And what's the URL for folks to get the 30-page Family Alchemy book?
It is a longer kind of URL.
We'll just put it in the.
I'll have to make a bit.ly kind of one for you.
Oh, great! Thank you.
But I don't have one right this second.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll just add it to the show notes. So folks that are on iTunes, just go to the description. If you're on my website, you'll see it too. So, Miss Tiffani, thank you so much for sharing your amazing story and your great vibes with us today.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes, listeners, I'll be back next week with another inspiring guest that will help you make your dream life your real life.
You've been learning how to make your dream life your real life with Hanna Hermanson. To get the resources mentioned on today's show and to listen to past episodes, visit www.dreamlifeisreallife.com.